Building core strength is not just about testing the muscles and building the capacity of the muscles by building things like core strength, core stability, or core endurance. Posture is key as well, because we've got to be thinking about the quality of the movement. And as core exercises get more dynamic, there's one joint that we really need to focus on, and that's the hip joint. So what we're going to look at today is perfecting or getting right or becoming competent at the hip hinge. The only equipment we need is some sort of straight stick or pole or broom handle or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically work from the most basic and build up a little bit more advanced on being able to become competent or mastering the hip hinge. Why are we doing that? Well, what the hip hinge does is it sets the stance. So once we've set the stance, we've now essentially engaged the hip in the movement. So what we can then do is really focus on the muscles working around it, and we also have to focus on the spine that's above it, because if we get that wrong, then we can have great set of hips and powerful hips, but if the spine's not working properly to go with the hips, then we're going to cause problems at the spine. So going right back to the basics, what we have to do is we have to get our upper body aligned with this stick or tube or whatever you have available to you. And basically what we're doing is we're placing this up the back. So we've got a contact point on the sort of the base of the lower back and the top of the pelvis. We've got one sort of towards the upper back, and then we've got the head in line. So this is the most fundamental and the beginner's stage. Now this doesn't mean that we need to be sort of rock solid and we can't move our head and we can't move our back and we can't move our shoulders or anything like that. It just means what we need to do is we need to focus on a few things first. Now, if you go on my How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week program, I go through a core skills workshop, which is essentially what we're looking at now. So we're building some fundamentals. So we're going to be bracing the torso. We're going to be maintaining the neutral spine. We're also going to be hinging from the hips. We need to bring all those three together and bring them into this hip hinge. It's also on my How to Overcome Lower Back Pain consultation and coaching. So you get a number of tutorials that come with it. And again, mastering the hip hinge is a part of that. So in building core strength and stability and overcoming lower back pain, they are essentially, or it is essentially a fundamental movement to get right. So what we're doing is, first of all, that's the position that we want. So we need to be able to get into that position. So we need some degree of thoracic extension to get our head into position. Now, once we've done that, what we're going to do is essentially chop ourselves off at the knee, and we're going to go down onto our knees. Now, all that does, it just takes the ankle and the foot out of the equation. So we just got less joints to think about, because what a lot of people want to do is they want to bend at the knee, moving the ankle, and they're worried about foot position. We've got all of that out of the equation, and what we're focused on is just what the hips are doing and what the spine is doing. So all I'm going to do is place this on my back like so, and what you'll see here is I've got a gap between my sort of lower back and the stick. I've got my hand in that gap. So what I can now do is I can feel that gap changing. So if I start rounding my back, I can feel it and I can manage that and I can adapt and change that. So we're in this position, we've got all of this in line. Now, if you find you're a little bit rounded here and you can't get your head and you're sort of doing that, you may need to work on a bit of thoracic extension, mobilize the thoracic spine, so you're able to get up into this position. Now, essentially the movement is hips back and hips forward. So you're going back like that, so the hips are going back, and then the hips are coming forward. All the time, you're maintaining that gap in the lower back. So again, what we don't want to do is we don't want to round in that position and lose contact all the way through. So we're maintaining in this position, hips are going back, hips are going forward. So what we're doing here is bringing all those core skills together. We've got a brace of the abdominals, we're maintaining the neutral or optimal position of the spine, we're hinging at the hip. What we're then able to do is even activate the glutes. As we get to the top, you should feel them sort of squeeze the buttocks together. So that is sort of stage one, and let's just say the beginner's level of learning the hip hinge. which is then, in some respects, mastering that hip hinge position. Part 2, we're going to come up onto our feet and we're going to lose the stick. So now what we've got to do is we've got to now, in some respects, not have that kinesthetic feedback from the back of the hand and that space in between the lower back and the stick. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start getting into the hip hinge position. So I'm going to go side on. What I'm also going to do is sort of make that position with my hands and place them on my thigh. Then with the movement is I'm going to push my hands down my thigh, and I'm doing the exact same movement. So I'm not going like that and bending my knee. I'm pushing my hips back, which is the same movement as before. And then I'm just going to let my hands rest on the top of my knee like that. So I'm just going to hold that position. So that's the position I want. Now the second thing I need to think about, because I can go into that position and be rounded at the back, but what I want to do is maintain that position. So if you need to know that, you could use a mirror like I've got there, or you could just place your hand, spread your fingers like that, so you've got little finger on the base of the spine and the thumb as high up the back as you can get it. So you just place it there and then you go down, and what you should be able to feel is if it moves or if it stays in position. So what we do, hands on the thigh, we go back and we just hold that position, and then what we can do if we're thinking, okay, I'm rounded, now I'm in position. Okay, so there we go. That's our start position. So we're holding there, and then what we can then do is bring our hands back up the thigh. So it's not a great big step, but because we haven't got the kinesthetic feedback of the stick and the hand on the back, then it's just a little bit harder. So what we're starting to do is we're starting to gain what I call as another core skill, which is joint awareness. So I now understand that when I do that, I don't need to touch it, I just know that's the position because I'm aware of what my joints need to be doing and how they need to be doing it. So it's very much focusing on that and bringing these core skills together, because a lot of people don't really understand what joint awareness means, and it just means proprioception, which is knowing where your body is and what it's doing as you move. So it's coming into that position. So that is sort of stage 2, or the intermediate part of learning and mastering the hip hinge. And then finally, stage 3, I'm going to just introduce just a light weight. It doesn't have to be a heavy weight. Now with this, I may need to bend my knees for this, but what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get that hip hinge from in here. So it's everything that we've talked about so far. Imagine we're just on the knees, hips go back, hips come forward. Again, we're in this position, hips come back, hips come forward. The reason I'm starting to introduce weight now is because that's now going to challenge the posture, because if I pick that up, what I might start to do is forget about everything else that I've just learned or just understood and go, because I've got that weight in my hand and I'm just worried about what the weight's doing. So I kind of lose that position and go straight from the back. So again, what we're looking for is, again, just focusing on the hips going backwards. So hips go back, hips go forward, and then maintaining that position. So we're keeping the head in line. So again, if I was to let go of that, I'm in that position. I've just got a weight in my hand, so I'm just challenging it in a new way. So it's exactly the same movement, it's just being challenged because I've now got weight in my hand. So nothing is different. The shins are vertical, the knees bending naturally because the hips going back and forwards. My head stays in line, my chest stays up, and again, it's just that hip hinge back and forwards. So again, all I'm doing is taking all those core skills, so the bracing of the abdominals, maintaining the position of the spine, and just hinging at the hip. Hips back, hips forward. And then finally, just that joint awareness, because I know all of those core skills are coming together for that one movement. And again, that one movement is going to help prevent injury with the lower back, and it's going to help build fitness with the core strength, the core stability, and the core endurance. Hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. Hopefully it's given you an idea of ways of building core strength and stability as exercises come onto the feet and become more dynamic. Or maybe it's helping you understand lower back pain and ways of lifting more safely because your joint position is that much more effective, because this joint position will again reduce that risk of injury, but also enhance the performance, reducing the risk of injury of the lower back and enhancing the performance of how the core works if you're a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced. So if you need help with lower back pain, click the link, one of the links below. You'll go through to my How to Overcome Lower Back Pain online consultation and course, or the link underneath it, and you'll go through to my How to Build Core Strength and Stability Beginners 12-week program. Many thanks for watching. My name is Chris. I look forward to working with you in the future.